Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the modern market, where every day we discuss everything to do with the modern market. That is the crypto market, the NFT market, and how to make some or ideally a lot of money on the internet. We've got a big show today, getting to get into everything that's going on in the market. We've got headline number one: 18 US states sue the SEC after Gary Gensler's speech suggests he is on his way out. That sounds pretty positive. Next, we've got Bitwise filing to create crypto index fund with 10 crypto assets included. That comes after just the other day where Coinbase did something similar. Pennsylvania House of Representatives announced legislation to enable the state to hold Bitcoin on its balance sheet. Want to do a bit of a reflection on the strategic Bitcoin reserve. Heard Michael Saylor, Funky's favorite main character, talking about that in an interview in the last 24 hours. We'll touch on that. We've also got the latest on price action on crypto and NFTs and a discussion on the general state of the market at the moment. So stay tuned for that. I've got Legendary in the co-host seat with me today. We're ready to get into it. But just a reminder, friends, nothing that we say here is financial advice because we do not know anything for sure. So please proceed with caution and exercise your own judgment. With that out of the way, Legendary, it's Friday. It's the 15th of November. You're in Japan. The market's going well for you. How are you doing? How are you feeling?
GM, doing quite well. It's our last day in Kyoto. Tomorrow we're going to be on our way to Tokyo, and I'm quite excited for that. Equally excited for the show today. I had lots of reflections on the conversations that we had over the last couple of days. In terms of our own portfolio, in terms of how we've been thinking about bet sizing, allocations, our risk strategy, and all of that, and I found that to be really helpful, reflected more on that, and can't wait to get a chance to talk to that again.
Yeah, I've got some questions for you, to be honest, because I'm pretty sure. I mean, we'll see how much you want to share later, but I'm pretty sure. We spoke over the weekend about sizing and stuff, and we were like, look, I don't know if we've put in enough. And I feel like you made some significant changes quite quickly, which, to be honest, I think that's the thing you got to do, right? I've seen a few people writing in the last week, people who are like more successful traders than or more successful traders than me, saying like, look, in this type of market, you can't really, um, you can't really sit and wait like 4 days to mull over like what the most optimal outcome is. And actually, in the interview with Druckenmiller, which who's one of the most famous investors, and I referenced that a couple of days ago in the show as well. One of the other things he mentioned as part of his like various aspects of being a successful investor was if he likes something, if he thinks something is good, he'll like take a piece of it, and then they do more of their DD after. If it turns out that they don't like something, then they'll just cut it. But it's kind of speaks to that feeling, right? Like if you like something, you probably got to go for it in this kind of market rather than sit and wait. And once you figured it out, then you can make a more full decision. But Legendary, do you have any reflections on that before we get into it in a big way?
Yeah, I think that's even more accurate for a volatile asset class as meme coins. If you see something early and you like it, you're probably not the only one looking at that. And yes, you have a massive downside risk too, but often I do like that notion of getting a little piece of the cake myself, then looking into it, and then deciding if I want to aid more or not. And if I want to aid more and has pumped, at least that initial buy is moving my average price down instead of purely just top blasting. It kind of helps you also, it helps you cope with the FOMO, to be honest.
Yeah, I think maybe the cake analogy is actually really good. It's like, look, there's a cake. Let's see if this analogy works before we get into the headlines and the price action. There's a cake at a party. Everyone's taking a slice. Do you ask all the questions first about like what's in the cake? Is the ingredients okay? Like, what does it taste like? Do you ask other people's opinions if it tastes good or not? Would you just go and get a slice and then figure out how many bites of it you want to take after? You can throw it away without anyone seeing if you don't like it, right? I think that is actually an appropriate analogy. Um, Anything on that, Legendary?
Yeah, works pretty well. Look, from the cake analogies, I think we have a lot to talk on the show. So let's get straight into it.
Right, let's do it then. As always, got a lot of stuff to get into today, starting with the price action itself to get you up to speed with what is going on there. We have the majors pretty much quite cool at the moment, selling off just a touch. Bitcoin's at 89, down 1%. ETH also down around 3% at 3.1. That sounds really bad, to be honest, now compared to the other stuff. If Bitcoin's touching 19, ETH is still at 3.1. That is how it is. Solana is down 3% to 213, which doesn't sound almost as bad, even though it's down more than ETH at 210. That's pretty damn healthy on that side. On the meme side of things, we have, let's see what we've got here. We've got everything very much cooling off. We've got Doge down 6%, Pepe's down 7%, Whiff's down 12, Bonkers down 5, Peanuts down 5, Popcat's down 12, Mog is down 5. Pretty much red across the board. Mudeng's actually up 25%. I've got a feeling that was on a listing potentially. SPX is up 15% as well. That's one of Murad's key coins. It's interesting to see that. Degen, I think, just got added to the Binance perps, I think. It's very hard to keep up with everything at the moment, so we're doing our best. But that's up 40% on that news. If that is exactly the news, I think that it is. So yeah, generally down, a few like outliers. Getting into the headlines themselves, we have, let's see where the headlines are. I can't see them. Let's just read off the screen. 18 US states sue the SEC after Gary Gensler's speech suggests he's on his way out. That looks pretty positive for everything. Bitwise files to create a crypto index fund with 10 crypto assets included. If you just scroll down a little bit more. And finally, Pennsylvania House of Representatives announced legislation to enable the state to hold Bitcoin. What they said there was they want to introduce legislation that would enable the state to hold Bitcoin on its balance sheet as a reserve asset. The thing I started, well, we'll talk about that in a bit, but I just wonder, people talk about, we spoke yesterday about other foreign states wanting to front run a strategic reserve for Bitcoin from on a federal level for the states. I wonder if there's anything that would prevent the states themselves front running the federal reserve. So, I mean, that would be a smart move to make. Some notable sales from around the space. Another Frog NFT sold for 232 SOL. I think that's around $50,000. And CryptoPunks have been really moving. A beanie sold for 169 ETH and an orange hat sold for 46 ETH. I think the punk floor has really ramped up. Let me just double check to confirm that. It had gone up to 32 ETH yesterday, and now it's up to 37 ETH. So the floor in USD value for CryptoPunk is $117,000. So big moves in the CryptoPunk market, which was 70,000. Legendary, do you want to touch on the NFT market? Can you hear me? I think we might have lost Legendary potentially. Funky, can you hear me? Can you confirm if it's me or if it's Legendary that's gone?
I should be back.
I can hear you, not Legendary.
Got it. All right. I think we just lost Legendary. He seems to be back now. Thanks, man.
Yeah, I had to change Wi-Fi. I probably assume it's my turn to do the look at the major JPEG. Wonderful. Yes. Let's do it. And sorry for the quick hiccup. Actually, a green day on the JPEG side. We have Bored Apes being up 7%, reclaiming the 12 ETH floor, being up 12% over the last 7 days. We have Pudgy Penguins being up 5%, getting closer to the 10 ETH floor again, 9.87 ETH right now for them to be precise, and up 15% on the week. We have Azuki's only up 1%, 4.4 ETH floor for them, down 12% over the week. That is due to the massive correction that they had a couple days ago. They didn't manage to reclaim that original floor price yet. We have another green day for Miladis as well. Miladis up 7% over the last 24 hours, 5.5 ETH floor for them, and a total of 24% up over the last 7 days. And you said it at the top of the show, punks are up. And you know when punks are up, what's also happening, the V1 punks are moving as well. You know I like that collection B. They're up 25% over the last 24 hours, up 33% over the last 7 days, and sitting at a 2.2 ETH floor. I feel like they always have like this 1 to 2 day lag on a major move of the original CryptoPunks. The V1s are moving too as well. think there's actually a nice trade to be had there if someone wants to do that. But I honestly can't be bothered with trading for like a 20% increase on JPEGs right now.
Yep, I think that is completely fair. I was doing some nonsense stuff on JPEGs as well, and just realized like this is not where the liquidity is. Like, what's the point? I'm still doing some lending because I think that's just a nice way to park some ETH. But aside from that, I'm not doing too much more. Let's do the Web3 roundup to get you up to speed with everything else before we hit the major headlines, have a general discussion on the market. We've got Bitwise announcing the acquisition of Ethereum staking provider Attestant. The general theme here that I've heard people talking about is crypto M&A is on. We obviously had I think it was Bridge that was bought by, was it Circle or no? Who bought Bridge? The stablecoin business was bought by someone huge. I should really remember, but it was more than $1 billion. And now there's some further acquisitions. So this is a staking provider getting bought. I think the regulations is going to mean that there's a lot more of this stuff can happen now, which is pretty positive. Athena proposal to integrate SUSDE into the biggest crypto DeFi platform, Aave, has passed. I believe the founder just tweeted that they've added another $700 million of TL to their books for USDE. Remember, this is the synthetic dollar that I've been quite keen on over the last year or so. I've kind of reduced my position recently, but it seems like they're ramping their TVL back up, and they do have an airdrop, a third season of an airdrop, which is coming at some point early next year. So I'm wondering whether that would be a good thing to get back into as it continues its successful expansion. Franklin Templeton expands $410 million money market fund to ETH. That's sounds good. And also Tether announces the Hadron launch, tokenization platform for digital and real world assets. I feel like that's going to be pretty colossal, given all of the money and backing that Tether have in the space now for them to be launching their own RWA platform. In other news, Wasabi announces a Solana launch where users can now leverage trade Sol memes. I'm looking forward to giving that a go, because I think something's got to be done with, going across platforms all the time. I think that could be quite helpful. Bonk announces holder option to buy $400 million of Simon's cat at a discount as the cat to migrate part of its supply to Solana. Interesting. More and more of these coins are becoming multi-chain in some way, right? That's an interesting trend that we've noticed. So we'll see how that goes. And Kraken lists major rune dog, which rises 20% on the news. Again, like these listings are going to be crucial. They seem to always pump the price, at least immediately. Although the ones that did, Pepe and Whiff, not so long ago, have retraced just a touch. Legendary, that's the roundup. Before we get into the main headlines and general market discussion today, anything you want to pick out from those bits of news?
Yeah, I think it's more of a observation of a general theme that I've been seeing over the last couple of days, maybe weeks in the roundups, that we get more and more institutional news. We had the Biddle Fund expanding across multiple chains. We have Templeton putting more money in. We had the stablecoin acquisition that you mentioned previously. We have, obviously, also as part of the main headlines, another index fund being created after the one we talked about from Coinbase yesterday. So I feel like the news is becoming more and more institutionalized in a way. I feel like headlines in the last cycle wouldn't have been anything similar to that. Yes, there was strong VC activity, and you could have talked to this protocol raised at a $1 billion, this protocol raised at a $4 billion valuation. Then we could have talked about major NFT sales, about Park making 90 million on a Nifty Gateway drop, but we didn't have that strong focus on institutional news, and that to me speaks to the change of the market structure that Sammy also liked to speak to when he did his analysis on different Bitcoin indicators, and that's a positive thing I observe.
That's a really good point. There's always a bit of a question that we ask ourselves when we write the news, like to what extent do we go with there's a lot of news now, right? So part of the job of writing the news is actually just synthesizing the news. And we have to decide, right, how much do we go with this institutional stuff? How much do we go with, I don't know, just telling everyone every single ticker that is up or down? Because, that is news as well. People are very much tied to that. We kind of take this direction because I think there's slightly more to discuss than just pure price action. But also it does give, it gives you a better sense of where the whole market is moving in general. And I think it actually gives you a bit of confidence that although you may be much further down the risk curve, there's significant kind of institutional capital and attempts to enter the industry and build something significant there. Quick question though, Legendary. You mentioned last cycle. I'm trying to reflect here. This would be interesting to bring out. You mentioned like very high NFT sales and people making a lot on NFTs. Now, obviously, that liquidity has moved to meme coins. But I don't know if I've just got like a gaping hole in my memory, but I don't remember meme coins last cycle. Like, for clarity, for people who don't know, I got into this space for crypto via NFTs, and then I learned about all of crypto backwards. But it was NFTs that got me in, and that's how we kind of traded. What was there? Were there more meme coins back then as well in 2021? I don't remember.
Yeah, but not to the same extent of volume. We had SHIB running up quite highly, and that was one that dominated the timeline for a good amount of time, with people sitting on massive unrealized gains. There's been a good amount of meme coins also on BSC, on the Binance Smart Chain, which back then had a lot of people being up on BSC because they made a lot of money on DeFi Summer back in 2020, so before the NFT cycle. Definitely one of the most interesting stats that I observed that we shared on the show when it comes to comparing meme connectivity this cycle to last cycle was the Doge chart, so the original Dogecoin, not the Department of Government Efficiency, not the new one. And we looked at the volume on the day when it hit all-time high last cycle at, 60-ish cents. And then we looked at the volume now when it had been, and when it has been trending up to 40 cents. And actually volume now is already higher than it has been at all-time high at its peak last cycle, which to me is quite significant of how much more volume and how much more capital has moved into memes this cycle than in the previous one.
That is very, very interesting. So clearly significantly more volume now. The reason why I was asking is because someone mentioned to me yesterday in a private chat, they said, this is clearly all just a bubble. And I completely agreed, at least on the meme side. I agreed and I said, yes, the thing that I am doing practically, like in my brain, is thinking how the NFT bubble kind of how it acted out, how it rose up at one point in time, how we kind of went up and down for a bit, how we completely exploded, and then how it tapered off over a period of time and crashed in certain respects. It's like that is the mental framework that I'm applying to the meme coins as I'm about to participate. So I was just trying to think to make, I mean, on some level, I think what I'm doing is I'm trying to make sure that that is the right framework rather than comparing meme coins with alts, for example, because I guess there were other coins that ran last cycle too. To what extent is it more like that? And then obviously before that, there was DeFi summer, I've learned, and people talk about that as being some crazy kind of ICO season where you kind of ape in, and it's kind of the same things play out over time. I bet Funky will have something interesting to share here, being a third cycler. But Funky, how are you positioning? How are you seeing the trends develop, or is it just all the same thing happening?
Yeah, no, I was just going to comment about the memes in the previous cycle, and Legendary already talked about SHIB. And just two quick anecdotes. One is if you put $1,000 into SHIB when it launched in the summer of 2020, it literally, if you wrote it all the way to the second big peak on the pump, it would have made you a billionaire with the B, not a millionaire, billionaire. And then one of my friends, like a friend of a friend, his son basically made over 50 million on SHIB. He does nothing now. He is literally still, I think, in his late 20s and just living the life because of SHIB. So I think it's now just, all the attention is so much more diffuse. There's a proliferation of meme coins. So, I'm just kind of playing it safe. I don't really do the whole meme thing. I'd rather stack set. BTC is above 90K again, just FYI. And I just like making little small bets. I treat it like I'm at a casino and I'm at a little, just putting down bets on a roulette table. And if I make some, I just take it back and let the rest ride, and let the moon bag play out. Not financial advice at all.
Like it. Sounds terrible, Funky. No purpose, got so much money, can't decide what to do. Can't decide what to do with himself. Sounds absolutely terrible. Good stuff. I want to spend just a few minutes before we get into the headlines, just talking through maybe some practical stuff on what's going on. Legendary, we talked about different indexes yesterday. We had like the Elon index that Sammy kind of created. What are the ways that you're bucketing these assets at the moment? Like, how are you thinking about it? You sent me a message earlier, which made me think, are you in literally every single coin at the moment? You mentioned a base coin, for example, because Zeneca had tweeted that it could be base season, and Sam messaged saying, guys, I think we should look into base. Legendary has, of course, already looked into base and is already in. But like, how are you bucketing these things? Is it like Solana memes against base memes against ETH memes, or is it more thematic where it's like AI versus animals versus something else? Like, how are you versus Elon? How are you thinking about it?
I am thinking in 3 buckets, and I'm thinking in different chains. I'm thinking in the AI bucket, which is, I would say, the one where I'm the most knowledgeable on. It's also the closest one to the things that actually interest me. And there's obviously the animal bucket. And then there's like the Elon/political bucket, which can be which I had thought about as 2 buckets, but because Elon is now representative for American politics and so influential in that, I'm like happy to put that into one mental bucket to just have to compartmentalize a bit less. And then I'm thinking across different chains. I'm thinking Solana, I'm thinking Base, I'm thinking Mainnet, I'm thinking a bit of Sui, but this is where I reach capacity. Like, yes, there's also a bit of BNB in there, but main focus is Solana, in that order, Solana, Base, ETH. And in the topical order, for me, it is AI, Elon, animals. And then I further like split across different bet sizes.
Yeah. Okay. So, okay. It's a fairly nuanced answer, which I guess is the right way to answer any question, to be fair. I'm thinking...
What did you expect me to say? I'm thinking in memes that go up and in memes that go down.
Yeah, I was just hoping that it was just like 3 simple buckets and they all go up, ideally. But that's not necessarily the case. What am I thinking? For some reason, do you know the one that's interesting me the most? And maybe you're right. Maybe it's because Elon is just in that camp now. Actually, no, there's 2 people in the camp. I like the political / Bitcoin reserve idea. Like, I feel like those 2 things together is creating a real tailwind. So anything that's like Elon related / Bitcoin reserve related is interesting to me. I mean, arguably that means that the best coin to go for is Bitcoin itself, but I just find that there's something interesting to me in that political side. Is that the same for you, Legendary, or how do you view the political side? Because I've got an interesting tweet here to share, but just say your thoughts first.
Yeah, the political side is definitely an interesting one. I think you added that very good point to keep that inauguration date in mind. And then I also think because the political side is now so much in alignment with Elon, and as we said on the show yesterday, Elon yesterday, I don't have the current Kaito figure right now, is making up 42% of the entire meme mind share, essentially because those were memes that were Elon related. I think there's a lot of potential in the political side, and it's one that doesn't take too much like post rationalization or over intellectualization, which sometimes can happen with the AI stuff if people go like deep in what they're planning to do or into the lore behind that. And I feel like the political thing is pretty straightforward with the stuff that Elon is posting. I think didn't he post some new hamster thingy today, which is one that I actually missed because I was
the
around in
hamster,
Japan. But yeah,
the
what was the
hamster
hamster
Fight
thing
Club.
again? The
There was
hamster fight
hamster
club. Yeah,
Fight Club.
beautiful. I think the political side is interesting because it's a rather easy game to understand and to track attention.
Okay, you say not to over intellectualize it. We are going to do that just for a second because I did see a tweet which made me think twice, or two very distinct ways to think about the government side of things with Elon. The first is this tweet here, which is, let me just share the screen. There we go. Maybe I could zoom in as well a little bit. Here we go. So every entry on the Department of Government Efficiency leaderboard will have their own meme coin. That's the take. Because remember we said yesterday, and I definitely put it forward that that's going to be a big thing where Elon suggested that they're literally going to have a leaderboard for the dumbest ways that the government has been spending money. Like that is objectively going to be a hilarious thing for the internet. The thing that I hadn't necessarily thought of, the natural extension of that is, all of them going to have a meme coin themselves as well, then like some kind of meme coin related to it, and then that becomes a leaderboard. So I thought that was interesting, and this person shared that, look, it's already started with the hamster fight club, right? So that immediately became a meme coin. So every embarrassing thing could potentially become its own meme coin, which I thought was interesting. Does that then accrue value to the overall department that's overseeing it, which is the department, the DOGE department? I don't know 100%, because if all the liquidity then gets split across all of the other meme coins, I don't know how that works. But that was an interesting idea to think through. But the alternative perspective was shared in this tweet under Kyle Samani, who's a very prominent investor in the space. He was also pro this argument. He said, all major media will post the leaderboard on a regular basis with new updates. It will say Doge at the top every time. Doge will become the most widely seen ticker by far. However, there was this alternative take, and I think you might have actually mentioned this yesterday. Everyone will associate it with the department they hate for slashing funding to causes they feel passionate about. Every time anyone proposes cuts to any government program, it is hugely controversial and unpopular. Will all publicity be good publicity? Legendary. That is the question for you here. There's two ways to look at it, right? You think that all of the attention is fantastic. The internet has a great laugh at the expense of all of these programs that are put in place. Maybe there's extra meme coins, and people have a good laugh at it, and that attention is there. But is there an argument that, look, the practical outcome of that is, people are not happy because it's real money getting cut from people?
Yeah, it's a very good question. A couple of thoughts on that. First of all, I think with the cutting, Elon knows how to tell a story and spin a narrative for that to look positive and interesting. And I don't think it's gonna be those ridiculous things like the hamster fight club that draw a lot of attention and that are very memeable. It's not gonna be, I don't know, a massive healthcare cut that becomes a meme and people are hating that because it's not a good news. I don't see it playing out in that way. On the other post that you shared with Doge becoming the top thing because it's the one that will be on top of every headline, on top of every news. Here's my thinking on that. I am wondering where that attention will, or where that capital that's attached to that attention will flow to. Is it going to be the Department of Government Efficiency, or is it going to be the original Doge? Because that's just basically tradable on every single exchange. Obviously not on every single exchange, but on most of the exchanges you can buy Doge, and that's the easiest thing to buy. And if you're retail, do you really think about that distinction because this one is Doge, but that's actually just a dog, and the other Doge that other people are buying is the one that's actually the Department of Government Efficiency? Or do you just see the four letters and buy the easiest thing that comes to mind, and that already has an absurdly high market cap. So if you're an outsider and you're like confused that there's suddenly a Doge at 40 bill and then there's the Department of Government Efficiency say at 1 bill, you're gonna like, why is there two of them and one's at a 40x valuation of the other? I'm just gonna buy that one, or will you buy the smaller one? Like, this is where I'm trying to figure out how the market will allocate. And because I don't have a good answer to that yet, I'm allocating strongly to both Doge versions, just because I can't give myself a clear bet on either of the two of them. So I'm just betting on both.
Fair enough. That is one way to go about it. Funky, your hand is raised. Would love to get your thoughts on this. Then we'd also love to go to Stats, who's with us, for his thoughts on this kind of government efficiency line and any other thoughts on how the market is going at the moment. Funky first.
Just 2 quick points. One, the people who are going to complain are the ones who are not in this game anyhow. So I don't think it really matters. And more importantly, people thought that X was going to go in the toilet when Elon took over and cut literally 80% of the staff. So I'm not saying that those kind of reductions are going to come, but I'm sure there's plenty of government bloat that can be cut, and hopefully it'll just make everything better for us in the States.
Fair enough. I think you're probably, I think that is probably right. I don't know if there's going to be a lot of crypto people that are hyper offended by the cuts. And I think, as you say, Legendary, it's likely that they will be cutting things which are, how do you describe it? Like, the whole point of the leaderboard is that it's going to have to be funny, right? You can't have a leaderboard that's that's absolutely tragic and like saddening to see like really good people have their livelihoods taken away from them. Like, that will not be an entertaining thing to see on X. So you would hope that that would not be the official DOGE strategy. Quick reflection there, Legendary, before we go to Stats.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what I meant with framing a good narrative. And if you cut on funding for schools, universities, and healthcare, that's not going to look fun on the leaderboard. And yeah, I'm not going to say that's not going to happen. Might happen as well, but I don't think that this is what will get the most mimetic attention. And if there's an unpopular cut in there, I don't think that then the response of the market will be, oh, I don't like the healthcare cuts, and the way I voice my political opinion is I short Doge. I just don't think that this is not how politics will work in the next 4 years.
Yeah, I think that's probably right. Stats, welcome to the stage, my man. How are you doing? What are you making of this market at the moment? We're talking about Doge specifically at the moment, and I don't know, everything going on the governmental side of meme coins, but how are you finding the market in general? Any thoughts on that?
I was going to say the same thing Funky said. Not the whole thing Funky said, because I'm like, I'm not quite as bullish on the idea that Elon cutting all the costs on X led to everything being better. I think a lot of the data shows that the valuation of the company has gone down a ton since he kind of went to work. But the people in this industry who are buying these tokens don't give a shit. So I think that that's the most important thing with regards to that point. That's not to say that I think like Doge goes further from 60 billion or whatever it is at, but I just don't think that post is getting at the core of who the audience here is. One of the interesting surveys I did was of my followers before the election. The people who are not based in the U.S. were even bigger Trump supporters. So the people who are from the U.S. were like 75% for Trump, and the people who are outside the country are like 85% for Trump. And something like 1,200 people responded to it. So it was a pretty meaningful survey. And my takeaway is like, and my takeaway from that is like the people who are buying these things are often people overseas anyways, for whom these policies don't impact anyone at all. But broadly speaking, I just don't think the crypto audience or the people buying Dogecoin are the people likely to be offended by cuts to government spending in the United States.
Yeah, I think that's completely fair. Sam, while you're here with us as well, we were just talking before about the parallels with 2021 and to what extent we just think this is the NFT cycle playing out in a different way, to what extent this is just a humongous bubble. What are your thoughts with some of your analysis and observation of the data?
I mean, I think that's full on accurate, right? Like, you know, you have a little bit of precedent where something like Dogecoin has maintained value for a long period of time, and I think it's harder to call something a bubble when you've had, you know, a meme coin named after a dog stay valuable for 7 or 8 years. But broadly speaking, right now, everyone's saying just like random shit should be going to $1 billion because other random shittier shit went to $1.5 billion. Like, to me, that's just like the definition of a bubble. And every good bubble has a good narrative, you know, and I think that there are good reasons to think that these things can continue to go higher and whatever. And, you know, I think it's often been tweeted that bubbles are the best time to make the most money. So, you know, this is not to say this is not a game worth playing, and obscene amounts of money is being made. So I'm definitely not suggesting people to get out of this game, but you know, I think you fast forward 18 months and the whole timeline's going to be full of people just saying the biggest lesson I learned is take profit. Right now, the biggest lesson you've learned is let it ride. You know, so the timeline it's kind of funny, just as someone who doesn't trade a lot but more observes the kind of the sentiment in the space. It is kind of funny how every 8 months, like the talking head genius wisdom from the ivory tower flips between the one lesson is always take profit versus the one lesson is I could be a millionaire if I just hadn't sold my Pepe. Like, it just flips back and forth depending, and it's all just like a reflection of if number go up or down.
Yeah, it's no surprise that it literally the clip we produced from the show, I think yesterday or 2 days ago, is from an interview which I watched the other day from Druckenmiller, and him just saying, "Look, if you've got confidence in something, you got to go not just 100%, you got to go 200%." And like that's the overarching feeling in the market at the moment, right? Where people, the position is, this is the time to bet. If you want to bet, this is the time you want to bet. But as you say, that will just completely flip 180 at some point in time where that.
I think there's, and that does, yeah. And I think like, look, like, you know, how much money was made between Bored Apes going from 10 ETH to 120 ETH over the course of 18 months, like, because it was a cult, and it was not only a cult, but it was a cult that had like the best advertising space in the world, and Justin Bieber bought one, and all these different things were happening. Like, these can be like extreme money making opportunities. But if you look at the top, I tweeted about this a couple days ago. If you look at the top meme coins, and and exclude Sheeb and Doge, so get rid of the two that have been around forever. If you just look at all the meme coins that kind of go back to since Pepe, they're worth more now than the top NFT projects were worth at each project's absolute peak. So like the top 10 meme coins are already worth more than the top NFT projects worth at their absolute peak. Obviously, it's different because, you know, you can buy meme coins now on Coinbase and Robinhood, and they have a much wider buyer base. And you know, I think that the market caps for a lot of meme coins are not reflective of liquidity because so much of it gets kind of stashed away, you know, and the floats are quite small, which was sort of true with some NFT projects too. But broadly speaking, you know, it's like the speed of this has been, you know, at the end of the day, I just can't imagine this. Like, I can't imagine where we are. And I said 18 months. I would even shorten that. But you know,
that was
Murad,
actually,
who's made a lot more money than I, has said the opposite thing. So
that was going to be my follow-up question. Like, so when you see those numbers, like, what are you thinking into, like, what are the reasonable conclusions or some of the options of conclusions that you might come to for the timeframes?
I guess the options are, one is that, you know, I mean, one is that these numbers are crazy. Two is that we're in a totally new paradigm because of the new buyer base that the centralized exchanges bring on. And that in a world where Robinhood and Coinbase and Binance are listing these things, like the number of people who can send these things like to Valhalla are just so much wider. And that's something that we've seen at Meme Land, is like sometimes meme coin will go up 5%. It's because some Turkish influencer tweeted about it. Like, and when that happened, I mean, that was actually a very specific story where when we went up like 5%, everything else was down. We figured out that some big guy in Turkey was tweeting about it nonstop, you know, in Turkish. So to me, that opened my eyes to just how much there's like a whole world out there who sees this stuff as their casino. And that the centralized exchanges, particularly Binance, bring so many more buyers in. Like, even Solana, like I started allocating more money to Solana because it was listed on Robinhood. So, just because I had more money there than I do on chain, and that was easy. So I think that this stuff is all relevant. But at the end of the day, I think like the idea of the rise and fall of cults and like the rise and fall of things being cool, interesting, cutting edge, new, exciting, like I think that has to repeat itself, because all these things revolve around narratives that are 3 weeks old. How many narratives survive multiple years? I think that idea of things coming and going, I think will repeat itself. And the key is just to make your money and to put your stops in, and that's that.
Love it.
I mean, I guess the other flip is, and I do think like that the Trump presidency is extremely bullish for crypto. I think, so like just the little things that are being hinted, it's so clear that for him, I think right now he's a little bit on a revenge tour, a little bit on a prove that he's going to do it entirely his way. And I feel like within that kind of scope of things he's trying to implement, being pro crypto is one of them. So when I hear these rumors like about capital gains taxes on crypto being zero, or at least on US based crypto, even if it's just rumor, it's just a sense of a tone that he's out there, and crypto is one of the tools he's using to make his message. So I do think we are going to continue to get positive crypto headlines, and like I continue to be very long crypto. It's just when it comes to random kind of funny meme coins going up, it's just that type of stuff I think you want to be very careful with in terms of longevity.
Yeah, a lot of interesting stuff there. On the political side, I completely agree. I wonder whether the thing that we were talking about before the show, and just a little bit on it before you arrived, was the Bitcoin reserves. You mentioned, look, some whispers around no capital gains tax, and I'd actually messaged you as well to say, like, I looked for that yesterday. I saw the whispers on the timeline, but I couldn't find like a proper source. But as you said, there's like that thing circling. The Bitcoin reserve, though, I watched an interview with Saylor, who gave it in the last 24 hours, just talking about it. He's not saying it's going to happen, but it really seems to be catching hold, even in traditional media circles as well, as if not necessarily that it's an inevitability. We've obviously got Loomis proposing the Bitcoin bill, or is it the Bitcoin Act, the Bitcoin bill? I can't remember. What are your thoughts on that, Sam, and what that can do to the market?
I don't really know the details of it, to be honest. I haven't dug super deep. I think that you have to be, when they talk about creating a Bitcoin reserve, the U.S. has owned a lot of Bitcoin ever since it seized a lot of Bitcoin from Silk Road, and most of it, yes, I think some of it has been sold, but most of it hasn't been sold. So I think like one of these ideas is to move that Bitcoin over to a strategic reserve, which basically just kind of moves it from one ledger to another. Obviously, that's a bit joking, but that moves the Bitcoin from basically one wallet to another, and they say, okay, now it's a strategic reserve, which basically pledges that you're not going to sell it in the future, and it says, it kind of establishes a bit of relationship between the government's Bitcoin and crypto. Like that outcome, I think, is the base case, which to me is symbolic, but it's not that big of a deal, because it's basically maintaining the status quo, which is like, we're not going to sell the Bitcoin that we have, which is what we've done ever since Obama's presidency. From Obama to Trump to Biden, like there's been a ton of Bitcoin that the government has had since Silk Road that simply has not been sold. And it's just kind of, and if you say, okay, this is our strategic reserve, that's mainly a symbolic gesture. If the government were to, and so when people say like, well, like retail's front running the government, to me, that's not really in coordinate, or that doesn't align with this idea of a strategic reserve, which is simply kind of redesignating Bitcoin that already exists and that hasn't been sold for multiple presidencies. The idea of which different people, and I believe Loomis, but different people, or whatever her name is, but that different people have floated around of the U.S. government actually going and committing taxpayer balance sheet, like taxpayer money, and saying, we're going to take this and convert those U.S. dollars into Bitcoin. I think that's a different story. And if that happens, obviously that would be immensely bullish for all of crypto. But I think that there are two different steps there. And I don't have a strong view on which one will be done, because I think everything is in play with Donald Trump. So like, I wouldn't say that like that won't be done. But I don't think that that's necessarily the base case of a strategic reserve. Certainly possible. but I think that they are two different things.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's really helpful to split those into two. I want to come to Legendary for his thoughts in a second as well. But just to provide some context first, I think you're right to say that the base case is, look, let's just not sell everything. And I believe that was the message that Trump kind of committed to at his Nashville talk. Like, that's the thing he was happy to say, that that could represent the reserve, just like we won't sell. But the actual strategic Bitcoin reserve legislation, I'm looking at it now, showing it on screen for the people who are watching in. Again, this is not the full bill because I'm just reading the summary at the top of it, but this is the official doc. It's actually to implement, or one of the headline points is actually to go off and implement a 1 million unit Bitcoin purchase program over a set period of time to acquire a total stake of approximately 5% of total Bitcoin supply, mirroring the size and scope of gold reserves held by the United States. So my understanding is US gold reserve, the US holds around 5% of the total gold reserve, and they think that holding that amount of Bitcoin would be an appropriate measure.
And I think, like, again, to me, I think you want to look at the difference between what Donald Trump says and what the single most Bitcoin bullish person in the entire U.S. government says. So and distinguish which one's which. And so if the single most person in Congress is putting together these bills, yes, that's bullish, but it's not necessarily at the place where I think you want to say, okay, this is something that will be accepted by the majority of Congress or whatever. Versus, or if Trump were saying he wanted to do that, I think that would get me a little bit more, because I think Congress will probably follow his lead. That would get me a little bit more positive on that.
Like it. Appreciate your thoughts, man. Very, very interesting stuff. Legendary, any reflections on this conversation we're having?
Yeah, couple of thoughts on that. So first of all, I think Stats is absolutely right. The base case is we are gonna maintain the status quo, but formalize it a bit more. Call it a strategic Bitcoin reserve, move it from ledger to ledger. I don't think that Trump could go out there and say, we want to build a strategic reserve and buy $10 billion worth of Bitcoin, because then the market would actually front run the shit out of him. But I think it's yes, it's only a formal thing to like redesignate it and call it a strategic reserve, but I think it's like tremendously helpful for the institutional side of the market, because we had news on the show about Bernstein, about other asset managers saying, look, this is the time to buy Bitcoin. Then you have pension funds getting into BTC, and then when you have this like additional vote of confidence from the government telling you at a federal level, we are going to keep those that stash of Bitcoin that we already have because we think it's strategically valuable, that might sway even more funds, even more institutional participants to also buy BTC themselves, maybe buy that on a state level to the extent that this is possible. So even if there's like no actual buying by the US government on a federal level, I do think that it's more than just a formality. I think it could be read as a strong vote of confidence by the rest of the market and be helpful for the institutional side of the market.
Yeah, super interesting. You mentioned like these other people who'd be buying, who could be potentially buying as well. One of the headlines today, which we're obviously not going to get a chance to go through in detail because we've just chatted around the various topics for almost a whole hour. Just got about 5 minutes left. There was this news coming out from the Pennsylvania lawmaker introducing the bill for the strategic Bitcoin reserve. This was Pennsylvania lawmakers introducing legislation in the state's House of Representatives to permit its treasury to hold up to 10% in Bitcoin on its balance sheet. So they proposed the bill as a tool to protect against inflation, claiming that they can use Bitcoin as a hedge, offering stability in uncertain economic times. More specifically, the legislation, if passed, would allow the Treasurer to invest up to 10% of the state general fund, the rainy day fund, and the state investment fund. So it sounds like they've got 3 specific funds, which they'd be able to allocate 10% into Bitcoin. As of November, the state's Treasury reported it had more than $9.7 billion in its general fund and roughly $7 billion in its rainy day fund. So pretty sizable capital there too. I don't know how because I'd never really considered this. I don't know how this stuff operates, where if the federal government, it would almost be like, is this how it would be practically if the federal government had some intention, some long-term intention to accumulate Bitcoin, and the states notice that? Do they have authority to basically front run in that way? I have absolutely no idea on that. I don't know how the decision-making processes work, but I guess they do have enough independence to kind of make those decisions. Legendary, do you have any reflections? I don't know, Sam, if you know how these things kind of play out.
I don't.
It's kind of
You got to become an expert in so much random shit in this space. I'm not an expert in how states manage their treasury, if they keep money in stocks, Bitcoin. Like I don't know how treasuries get managed, but certainly can do a little research. Might just ask my friend ChatGPT and be an expert in about 5 minutes. I'll be right back.
That'd be great. Legendary, any reflections, or do you want to maybe move on to one of the other related headlines, because they're all kind of interconnected? And well, they're not that interconnected.
Yeah,
but
quick thought on that. I'm gonna go to the Bitwise fund. Wouldn't it be funny if you have BTC buying on a state level, and at some point the federal government is dumping their own BTC stash on the individual states and using the states as an exit liquidity? That would be a very, very unpleasant political drama to watch. Anyway, let's use those last minutes to get a bit more from the news to you. The second headline that we had, I'm sharing this on screen right now, is Bitwise filing that their Bitwise 10 crypto index fund is also going to be listed as an ETP, as an exchange traded product. I think there's a bit of historical context that's important to that, because this is not a new fund. This product had already existed, and it's a product that is constituted currently of 75% in Bitcoin, 16% in ETH, 4% in Solana, and the remainder is split across Ripple, Cardano, Avalanche, Bitcoin Cash, Chainlink, Uniswap, and Polkadot. And it had launched originally 7 years ago, actually, in November 2017, as the world's first crypto index fund. This is how Bitwise is calling it in their official press release. And for 7 years, it has been a fund that wasn't accessible to retail investors necessarily. It was a private placement for accredited investors, but Bitwise's goal with that is to list it as an exchange traded product to make that more broadly accessible to retail. And it kind of goes very much in line of the thought of the news that we had yesterday with Coinbase also bringing a new fund to the market. And I think it is very telling of how these big players are viewing retail interest after we had the ETFs run, after we had BTC especially run, that then there's more thinking along the lines of how can I get more exposure to this industry? Is there a quote unquote ETF? In this case, an ETP. Is there an ETP on the industry? Is there an index that gives me more exposure, that allows me to have a bit more upside from the things further down the risk curve? And it's also very, very easy to market product for exchanges, for companies like Bitwise. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see in the heat of the bull market more of these index products coming to market and being marketed very, very aggressively.
I definitely agree with you that I think there will be a proliferation. I just don't know why. I just don't know if other people are there yet when it comes to allocating capital into crypto. It feels like step one, which is a big hurdle in itself, is to buy Bitcoin. I just can't see people wanting either some ETP where they're going to also going to get 0.1% of Uniswap as well at the same time. I think it's a cool thing, but I don't know. The other things in there would need to be interesting enough to offer some meaningful diversification away from Bitcoin. Otherwise, you could just buy Bitcoin. That's kind of my instinctive feeling. Wonder if you have a thought on that, Sam, from a more, whether that's an institutional investing perspective or just from a personal level, the people you know, like would these types of mixed products be interesting to people?
Sorry, run that by me again. I missed the context.
Legendary. These Bitwise have kind of produced this new ETF where it's like a mixture. It's like Bitcoin, ETH, Sol, 0.01% of Uniswap, 0.0 something else, and Coinbase had their top 50 as well the other day.
Yeah.
Like it's kind of
I
like
think you have to differentiate between, are these things even tradable? Like I had a, when I was running my daily show on NFTs, I had a large cap NFT index, but you couldn't buy it. I think a lot of these, like building an index can often be done for data gathering purposes and to give people context, but that's different from like an S&P 500 where ETFs get built around it. Do you know if this is actually trading?
Yeah, Bitwise plans to list it as an ETP. It already has been trading live for 7 years. Was only for accredited investors. The Coinbase one is one that can be, I think, bought on their exchange.
Yeah, I mean, look, the question is always, does it gain volume and traction and liquidity? And if it does, then that's another buying force. I mean, the big thing I saw yesterday that like Betterment, which is just like a robo advisor in the US, has $45 billion of AUM. Like I have a little bit of money on Betterment. They just offered a crypto index. And I think that those types of things, less like these exotic products, or exotic's the wrong word, but like more interesting products where you have 50 different coins involved, like those are mildly interesting because a lot of those coins don't need a lot of money to really get moved. But to me, the bigger thing is just Bitcoin and ETH being available to more people, being pushed by more people, being a default option for more people. I played golf with a wealth advisor this weekend who still, billions of dollars under management, and still like crypto isn't even one of the options they put forward to their investors. So I think you still like, I think it's, to me, like for at least for the space, the big thing is chipping away at that. Although that would obviously have more impact on the majors than the smaller stuff that you have.
Love it. Knew you'd have a story like that in the back pocket, Sam. Appreciate the perspective as always. Guys, we've run a little bit over today. Hope you enjoyed the show. I think I've got a feeling the conversations are going to be a little bit more like this when the market is running, when it's getting a bit maniacal. We will be discussing stuff maybe in a bit more detail, trying to weave in the headlines rather than doing full segments on them, because I think our insight onto that might be the better way to go. But look, we hope you had a great week with us. We do this every single day, Monday to Friday, 7 a.m. Eastern time for 1 hour. We're live on X. We're live on YouTube as well, if you prefer on video. And you can also get us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify if you want to catch up. Have a wonderful weekend. Take care. And we will see you on the other side. Bye-bye.